Hi, Justin. Good morning. Thank you for being with us today. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell us what is your area of expertise, your title, if you have one. If you can spell out your name, tell us how to pronounce it correctly, and what would you like us to call you?
Sure. So I'm Justin Cates. I'm the president of the International Association of Emergency Managers U.S. Council. And my spelling of my name is JustinkAtes. And my area of expertise is emergency management and emergency planning.
Well, thank you. So we want to ask you today because we have an eclipse coming up, and there was all sorts of differences between how the emergency preparedness was from this, it's what's going to happen this time, and what happened in the last eclipse in 2017. So I'm going to hand it over to Erin for those questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Justin, for joining us today. So there have been several conspiracy theories spreading online ahead of the eclipse. Some people are claiming that no states have ever declared a state of emergency ahead of previous eclipses, but we actually found that in 2017, before that total eclipse, Oregon did, and some other localities did as well. And meanwhile, this year, there's been multiple states that are in the path of totality that have been declaring states of emergency ahead of the eclipse. Why would a state declare a state of emergency before an eclipse?
Sure. A state or a county or a city or a town might declare a state of emergency before an eclipse because a state of emergency allows them to use additional authorities and protections to be able to ensure that responders and other officials can help out during that unique and very demanding situation. The eclipse is typically a situation where you'll have visitors from all across the country will travel to your jurisdiction, to your location, and they may impact travel and transportation routes. They may impact the communications networks through their cell phones, and they may create a higher demand for services like emergency medical services, increased car accidents, and all kinds of things. And so, as part of that, a state of emergency enables that government jurisdiction to be able to quickly react and move resources around that they might not be able to do on a day to day basis. So, it's a very proactive activity that not only during this eclipse has been used, but in previous eclipses and other types of special events in the past.
So, what type of planning goes into like planning for something as big as an eclipse? Like you mentioned, preparing for traffic jams and large crowds and potential accidents. How long does it take to prepare for something like this in multiple states?
One of the benefits that we have with eclipses or other sort of space phenomena like this is you have typically a long time to be able to prepare for it. You know that it's going to happen. You know generally where it's going to happen. So jurisdictions that are within that path that are likely going to experience the most significant impacts from this type of event can start preparing in a lot of cases up to a year in advance. And a lot of times, what they're doing is they're trying to understand what are the public safety impacts? Do they need to bring additional firefighters, emergency medical services, transportation resources, law enforcement to help direct traffic? They are working to sort of plan where the biggest impacts to their jurisdiction would be. And then in other cases, they might have special events that are taking place with this eclipse. So they might be doing a festival or a fair or some sort of a viewing area that has parking set up and medical services and food services and all kinds of other accommodations. And so a lot of times behind the scenes, that jurisdiction is working to organize all the players, make sure they know what the expectations are for that day, and then a lot of times they will rehearse it in advance through an exercise to practice, make sure that everybody knows what their roles and responsibilities are going to be for that very short event that's going to have much longer ramifications for probably a couple of days around people traveling to the event and traveling from the event.
So, there's been a lot of conspiracy theories, like I mentioned earlier, about this event and um, the emergency preparedness plans that are in place. Should the general public be concerned or worried about these plans?
So our emergency plans that are developed by local and state officials are actually there to protect folks. And these are not just for eclipses, but also for other types of emergencies that might occur, like hurricanes and tornadoes and accidents. Um, in many cases, emergency managers are able to leverage the plans that they might put in place for other types of emergencies and apply them to very unique events like an eclipse. Because a lot of the same types of things might happen, things like significant crowds that lead to potential for injuries, lots of traffic jams that might clog roads and prevent emergency responders to get to and from locations on a quick basis. And these plans can be repurposed and utilized for things like an eclipse. The public really should stay informed, and they should go and look at their local government's website to see, what are the potential impacts going to be that day. Do they have any recommendations about what roads to stay away from? What do they recommend regarding preparations if you are going to go and see the eclipse at a certain location in that community? Local officials will provide guidance and direction as to how to experience this once in a lifetime event as best as you can.
Okay, Mauricio, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So, based in your own experience, and I know that you already like I guess, mentioned some recommendations that people should do and look out for if you're interested in looking at the eclipse. But in your own experience, what do you think are the best recommendations if I'm living in the path of the eclipse? What are the best safety practices or safety recommendations that you can provide to our viewers?
Sure. So I think the best recommendation I can make is if you do live within that area where you're going to see the eclipse, if you can stay where you're at, that's definitely the easiest for our first responders. So if it's if it's at your house or something, if you can just stay there and watch it, that'll help to keep some of the folks off the roads. But if you are traveling to a location which is within that path, what we would ask is for you in advance to check with that local jurisdiction, that state government, and see what recommendations they have in place. Do they have specific restrictions that they're putting in place as to where vehicles can travel? Do they have specific locations where they want you to park so that way you're not blocking traffic and things like that? I mean, one of the best examples that we see is that there's concerns about folks on highways stopping in the middle of the highway to watch the eclipse. We do not want that to happen at all. So if they can check in advance with wherever they're headed to for that viewing, make sure that they see what the recommendations are. And then when the actual eclipse is happening, there's all kinds of safety recommendations on how to do it properly, ranging from making sure that you have the right glasses and all of that kind of stuff. Definitely not the area of expertise that emergency managers bring to the table, but we also want to work closely with the folks who are providing those individual safety recommendations and make sure that we pass that information along as well. And normally you'll find that information on your local town, city, state website about how to participate in this event safely.
Justin, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you think it's important and fundamental for our audiences to know or to understand? Not only from this eclipse that is about to happen, but also about understanding what it takes to put some emergency preparedness or state of emergencies in place that we just forgot to ask you.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we would want our folks to understand is that emergency managers are behind the scenes working to coordinate and plan with fire and police and emergency medical services, your local departments of transportation, transit, all the different folks who have a role to play in a major event like this. And emergency managers are really the glue that keeps all of that together. And hopefully, by the end of a robust planning process, now everybody knows how they can work together seamlessly to make everybody have as safe an event as possible. And we know, especially for these very rare events, we want to make them a rememberable experience, a memorable experience for folks to really think back on. And if it's filled with traffic jams and injuries and all kinds of other things, we didn't do our job. So that's really the role of an emergency manager, is to help plan, bring everybody together, and make this a really safe experience for everyone.
Well, thank you. Erin, do you have anything else?
No, I don't. Thank you so much for providing that additional context and helping our viewers understand what goes into actually preparing for something as big as an eclipse like this.
Absolutely.